Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the third edition of our webinar series, The Future Design of Streets, Session 1. A beautiful day today, 2 of February 2022. Beautiful number and a really important thematic. We are starting talking about streets. Streets, why streets? Well, it's really important. Social places and sustainable places. And we have large challenges on that. How to design it, how to use it, and why this social space is really important, because it's our main space, public space, of our daily living environment for everybody, young, old, gray, colorful, everybody. How do we do that? Well, not anymore like we used to do, only traffic thinking or all the kind of thing, engineering thinking. We can imagine nowadays 100,000 impossible scenarios and approaches, all specific maybe, but we are going to talk with a few really interesting people today to have a little bit of insight on it. Well, the webinar is the third edition and we'd like to have short presentations. So the speakers that we have today, first of all, we have Annemieke Molster. She's an urbanist from the Netherlands, planner, and she wrote this beautiful book, Loop, what is in English maybe walk or walking, and it's all about the physical, spatial environment of public space and also the streets, very important element. Rene Kural, the second speaker of today. He's an associate professor at the Danish Academy of Architecture, Design and Conservation School of Architecture. And he is dedicated his full professional life, I think, in the integration or dynamic between architecture and sport, and wherein we, of course, are going to ask him to tell his experience or his insight in the context of Copenhagen and the Danish. And the last but not least, of course, is Daniel Yabar. He's an architect and professional, I think it's professional skateboarder, at least on a higher level, from Madrid. And he designs skate spaces and also streets wherein you can skate. And a really active form of using the street in another manner. Well, what's the format today? We have, as I said, very short presentations. My name is Daniel Casas, urbanist, urban planner, and dedicated and fascinated about street life and street spaces. We are doing this with 3 universities of Portugal. It's the Portugalense University, it is the Faculty of Architecture University of Porto, and the University of Minho, the School of Architecture and Art. Both 3 with Ivo Oliveira, Bruno Moreira, and Teresa Correira that form our core team in this. Well, looking very forward to hear your presentation. Just slightly, one big question that we have always is, what is the design assignment of streets? This is our main question of all this webinar series. And we are fascinated on it, how we can enlarge and enrich in a way the street design, not only by making it better and more active for a lot of people, but also to hear other people and share their ideas, their culture. And therefore we have Madrid, Arnhem and Copenhagen today, and a little bit of Porto where I'm in. So far my introduction, and I want to ask Annemieke as first to start her presentation and join with you your beautiful insights that you wrote in your book.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Okay, well, I think I can sort of skip the introduction because Daniel also already introduced me. I have a very limited amount of time, so I wrote this pretty thick book, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what is in the book. I have written that book with 10 design principles for pedestrian friendly cities. here are the 10 design principles I made. But today, or tonight I should say, I'm only going to tell you a little bit more about 2 of them, which are a network of direct routes and the 7th design principle, making plenty of space to walk and sojourn. So first of all, the network. What we see is that a lot of the times the network of routes is not so great for pedestrians. There is a need for detours because of several things. For example, because of barriers. Here you see an example of a small city in the Netherlands. It's called Breukelen. And on the left side, you see Breukelen in 1900. And the walking route between the station and the city center was 900 meters. And then in the 1950s, somewhere, the bridge was too small for all the increasing car traffic. And they demolished the bridge and made a new bridge somewhere further down the canal. And nowadays, until today, the walking route between station and city center is 1.7 kilometers, which is too much for a lot of people. So a lot of people don't walk to the station anymore. On a smaller scale, you can also see a need for detours because of missing links. And here you see 2 examples of desire lines. And maybe you can say, hey, I like desire lines and I use desire lines. So it's not really a missing link because there are people who just made the link themselves. But you can imagine those routes not being very comfortable and definitely not for people with disabilities. Well, there are also other types of, the need for detours in unfavorable street patterns. For example, you can have street patterns in which are with winding roads and a lot of dead ends. And sometimes block sizes are just too large. So here you see Portland and Salt Lake City with a very different block size. The larger the block, the more detours are needed. And actually a grid pattern is a little bit more, it's better than winding roads or roads with dead ends, but even better is a grid pattern with some diagonals in it. And here you can see in the picture that if you add 2 diagonals to the street pattern, or to a grid, I should say, the walkable area will be 1.4 times as large. So it really makes a difference what kind of street pattern you design. Okay, sorry, I skipped some. This is a totally different kind of problem concerning the network, and that's the notion that a lot of, at least in the Netherlands, there are very little municipalities who even have any idea of the pedestrian network because they just don't have it on a map. Here you see the map of Amsterdam, or a small part of Amsterdam. A few years ago, they just had this. So this is like the space between a building and the street, and it just surrounds the blocks. But it's not really a network that consists of routes that are tied together. It's just all separate things around the block. It's not really a network. And if you don't have any notion of your network, how are you going to know anything about it or know what might be wrong with it and how you might be able to improve it? So what you need to do first is put that network on the map, like in Amsterdam, fortunately they did a few years back. And also now in Rotterdam, they are also starting to make a map of the pedestrian network. And once you have that, you can also develop a vision for that network. So what kind of network do you want it to be? In Brussels, for example, they said we want to have really pedestrian boulevards. Here you see 7 boulevards from the city center of Brussels into the outskirts to important places. And in the city of Aachen in Germany, they said we would like to combine the pedestrian network with the green network of the city, so people can walk from their homes along green routes to green areas outside of the city. And if you have that, if you have the network on the map and you have a vision of what kind of network you want it to be, you can start improving the network. And here you see an example of the city of Leiden, where they added bridges to be able to walk around the historic center. And on the left side, a place in Rotterdam where they just made a new route cutting through a building because at that place in the city, the grid was too large. So they just added a route crossing a building. Then the second design principle I would like to talk to you about is the lack of space. And this is another problem we see a lot, that there's too little space to walk. And sometimes that means that there's too little space as a base, but sometimes basically there is enough space, but it's used for so many other things that there's too little space to walk in a comfortable way. So if you want to make better places or more space for pedestrians, first you need to know how much space you need. And then first of all, you need to be able to walk, of course. And in the Netherlands, we have just this year a new guideline which says that pedestrians need 2 meters of free walking space. That's just for walking. So that's not the entire sidewalk, but just the walking space for them. And if it's really quite crowded, you might need more space to be able to get people comfortably walking from A to B. But walking is not everything you need to make a good, walking space is not everything you need for a good walking route. You also want to have space for sojourning, so places to sit and also space to play. That's also part of the pedestrian space you want to have in the street. And next to that, I have just called this stuff. You need space for stuff, which usually, there are so many things that need a place in public space, and usually it's put on the sidewalk. So you need to get some space for those things too, like signage, and lampposts, and traffic signs, and parking machines, and bicycle parking. Well, I won't tell all the lists, but there are a lot of things that need space. So you need to have some space for all those things, so they don't turn up in your walking space. And then there's one last thing you need space for, and that is distance between private spaces and the public space. And that is, you need that small space between a building and the place where people walk to get the most interaction between inside and out. So that makes for attractive routes if there is also something going on inside and outside, and you can see each other and maybe talk to each other. And research shows that you can call it transition zone. If it's like 1.5, maybe 2.5 meters, that works best for interaction. If it's too small, people close the curtains, and if it's too large, people tend to add that space to their private space and close it off to the public space. So that can be sort of a small zone with what you see on the left picture, or maybe it's a small front garden. So if you add this all up, you can see that you need a service zone to put all that stuff. You have a free zone, and you have a transition zone where you might also put some stuff, but also works as an intermediate zone between the public space and the private space. So this might add up to, I don't know, maybe 8 meters, but that also, of course, depends on the place in the city where you are and what you really need. So how can we make this space? I don't know exactly how my time is going, but I hope I can still tell you something about how we can make all this space for walking. And the first thing you need to do is to shift priorities. And we call this in the Netherlands and in Belgium the stop principle, which means to put walking first, then cycling, then public transport, and then cars. So you have to convince people to really shift priorities so you can make space. And this might mean that you could just start decluttering. So get those that stuff out of the way. Maybe you can get less objects through smarter design by putting different things on one pole, or maybe this bus stop that needs really little space. Maybe you can put bicycle parking in a side street where there's more space, or even indoor. This might actually be a bit of a Dutch problem, but okay, if you have a lot of bicycle parking space needed. And another thing is maybe you have to consider having smaller terraces and less displays. if that is not enough, if decluttering is not enough, or maybe you could say this is another form of decluttering and putting stuff to the parking zone. So maybe you can make the parking zone into a service zone, remove parking space and make place for objects. Or you can remove a parking lane altogether, or switch from perpendicular to parallel parking, as you can see here in the city of Utrecht, with a before and after picture where they made a lot of more space for walking. This is a very important route from the station to the city center. Or you can have less driving space by removing a lane or introducing one way. This is an example in the city of Eindhoven, where they created more space for walking and also more space for green, also considering climate adaptation. Or maybe removing car traffic altogether, as this example in Vienna shows. Or what you can also do is lowering speed limits, and that makes it possible to combine different forms of mobility. So, for example, you go from 50 to 30 kilometers an hour, and then cyclists can use the driving lane and they don't need a separate bicycle path. Or if you go even further, you could go from 30 to 15 kilometers an hour, and then even pedestrians can use the driving lane. And in that way, you get the so-called Dutch woonerf, or shared space. And the last thing, the last possibility I hope to inspire you with is sharing space in time. And that means that maybe you have a temporary pedestrian zone in the street where it's just a pedestrian zone a part of the day. Here you can see an example in Quebec, Canada. And on the right-hand side, you see an example in the city of Groningen in the Netherlands. And they have designed a so-called flexible zone, or hybrid zone, you can call it, between the pedestrian zone and the zone where, well, actually mostly cyclists use that street, but also small cars and small electric buses. And what they do is when it's really crowded with cyclists, usually when all the students cycle to the university, because it's a university city, the cyclists use the hybrid zone. But when it's really crowded with pedestrians, for example, when everybody's shopping Saturday afternoon, the pedestrians can use the hybrid zone. So those are some ideas to make space, and I hope you can join me. I don't know what you do for a living, but I hope you can join me in making space and tying those roots together, and then we are really well on our way. Well, there are 8 other design principles, but these are 2 pretty important ones. So that's it.
Thank you, Annemieke. Very nice presentation. And of course, putting an old book in 10 minutes, that's really challenging. What's kind of curious, also for all the audience that are watching now, we have also a little survey. We will do that later on a newsletter again. And 2 of the, let's say, questions that people had there was about pedestrian things. And I think some part of that question are already answered by you. So thank you, Annemieke. Okay. And we talk later on the other question. Rene, I would like to invite you to start your presentation and share your ideas and insights with us.
Thank you so much. I will just share the screen. And can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then this one. Oops, sorry.
Yep, perfect.
Yes. As Daniel said, that I am associate professor at the Royal Academy, the School of Architecture in Copenhagen. And I'm going to talk a little bit about design of active streets through some examples from Copenhagen. Copenhagen as a playground. But when Daniel, he invited me to give a small speech here, I was a little bit curious about what spaces are adult Danes actually active in 2020. So I found the news data, and as you can see that the green one is 2020, and that is because it's the period of the COVID-19. And that means that you can see that home and garden is very popular for the moment. But the overall pattern is that for the Danes on a whole, they like the nature most, and then roads, streets, and sidewalks. If you have the same data for the biggest cities in Denmark, which would be Copenhagen, Aarhus, Aalborg, and Odense, the most popular space for being active would be roads, streets, and sidewalks. We like to just walk out of our door and then go for a jog or go for a ride on our bike. Those of you who has been to Copenhagen will recognize the building at the back. That is actually the town hall of our cities from the beginning of the 19th century. And on the opposite corner, there is a thermometer showing the temperatures. And whenever it is raining, a guy comes out with an umbrella, and that is 363 days a year. And a couple of other days, this lady on a bike is out. That's because the bike is very important for us. And we were actually nominated the world's best cycling city in 2017. So I just want to apologize to Utrecht and Amsterdam because we were better than you. No, we are not apologizing for anything. But in Copenhagen, every third person who works or studies in the city comes by bike. And everybody who's living there and is working there or studying, every second person goes by bike. And this picture from the previous picture is actually from the 30s. And it was incredibly popular. So why do people actually prefer the bike? And if you stop a tourist in Nyhavn and ask him or her, why do you think the Danes like to go by bike? They will probably answer because of concerns over the climate. And if you ask the people of Copenhagen, they say, well, it's faster, it's more convenient, it's healthier, it's a good way to start the day. And only 9% answers because of concerns of the climate. We would really like to have palm trees in the streets. We want to have sand beaches and 20 centigrades all year round. And from an architect's point of view, it's really interesting that people also answer, I discover the city and I experience the city. And it's, I think the reason why things are going in the right way is due to the ongoing densification of the cities. It doesn't matter if we are in Great Britain or in Germany or in Denmark, there is an ongoing densification of the cities. And it makes really good sense. Because if it's very short distance from your home to your work and from your work to your leisure facility, the possibility that you would choose the bike or you would take the public transportation is much higher than if there are great distances between home and work, for instance. So I could say that is because it's all about intelligent city planning. It is intelligent. The intelligent city is the city which makes people healthier and makes people go by things like, for example, a bike. This is actually Copenhagen seen from the south. And you find this very strange lobed harbor front all down through the city, which makes it very charming. This is the sea. It's not a flood or anything like that. And I'm going to show a few new typologies. The bicycle bridge. The bicycle bridge is a new typology in Copenhagen, and it looks like this. This is the bicycle tube. And if anyone has seen Blade Runner, it's exactly this feeling you have when you go by bike on this bridge. The other one, which is quite popular, is the Kissing Bridge in Nyhavn. And to the right, you can see the very famous area where you can have a beer or some very good food to eat. And they built this Kissing Bridge. It was a disaster because the entrepreneur went bankrupt, and it was just standing still for, I think, 3 years. until the municipality of Copenhagen sort of paid the rest of the money to have it fixed. But what it also meant is that if you look on the backside of the guy who took this picture, Copenhagen actually got a new face. It's a new, very popular area for street food. And the third one is the Circle Bridge, which has been designed by a Danish, Icelandic artist called Olafur Eliasson, and it can actually open so you can have ships in and out of the harbor. Another typology is the bicycle super highways. This is actually an old map, and yesterday the bicycle superhighways are the red lines. And yesterday I checked that there are actually 10 superhighways in Copenhagen for the moment, and they have planned 8 more. In this case, the bicycle superhighways are between 5 and 25 kilometers long. And the good thing about it is that 30 municipalities in and around Copenhagen are working together on this. Previously, they would be fighting against each other, but now they're forced to work together. And the vision is that we would like to have 60 superhighways in Copenhagen with a total length of 850 kilometers. Somebody much smarter than me has calculated that there has been a reduction of 40,000 sick days annually. I know it's these Excel guys, they can get a number out of anything, so I don't know if it's a correct calculation. But then again, 40,000 a reduction of 40,000 sick days, that's a lot. And it looks like this. You're not supposed to meet a car. Of course, you will on certain intersections meet cars, but the idea is that you don't. And everywhere where you go, you will actually be able to see where you're heading. How far are you from your destination? And if the bad luck is out and you have a puncture, you will be able to fix it. And this pump is something where you pump yourself with your leg, and so there's nothing electrified about it. You do it yourself. I'm just going to show a few more examples of what I think about is an active street. But I also want to say that being physically active and we are trying to improve what I call the intelligent city planning. I think we should look at it from a much broader perspective. And this picture, the photographer is my good friend, is Sigurd Halle Sigurdsson. He's an Icelandic guy. He's a professional photographer, and he couldn't find the original, so we have to settle with this one. But as you can see in the forefront, there is a walker, and I believe it's a lady, and she has tied it to the traffic sign. And then probably she's now sitting in the bar of Freddy's, and she's having a beer and smoking a cigarette with her friends. But for me, the intelligent city is also something about body culture, or what we could call body formation. It's also about inclusion. It's about reduction of inequality in health, and it's about a reduction of loneliness. I don't want to become 100 years old if all my friends are dead and I feel lonely. So the good city reduces loneliness and is the inclusive city at Freddy's Bar. You probably know this harbor bath. It's incredibly popular. But what I also want to say is that the politicians of Copenhagen has shown really very much bravery, because they have invested billions of Danish kroner, billions and billions, in order to make sure that the polluted water from the sewers do not end up in the harbor of Copenhagen. And there are no red strings to cut when it's invisible in a way. But everywhere in the harbor of our capital, you can actually dip in and have a swim. It's not allowed. Everybody does it, and it's incredibly dangerous, but it's wonderful to have thousands and thousands of square kilometers of clean water. To the left, you see former apartments for the working class. Today is the creative class. No workers can afford the increase in the cost of these apartments. And finally, we have this power plant, which is almost in the center of Copenhagen, and it's producing electricity from garbage. And we don't have any hills in Denmark. You could, at the most, you could call a hill, a Danish hill, you could call it a wrinkle, because it's very, very low. But the architects in Big, they suggested to have this ski slope on the building. So all year around in Denmark, you can actually ski. And it really, really makes very good sense. So here at the end, this is what it looks in summertime, and the only thing is that they have to change the grass because it cannot take tear and wear, which the architects should have known. But anyway, so everything has to be replaced. At the end of my small speech, I would like to say that, and I've been inspired by the British architect Cedric Price. One should say that, like medicine, urban planning must move from the curative to the preventive. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rene. Thank you very much for your wonderful insights and some provocative competition between the Dutch and the Danish. Very good to put that on table. Also, the last let's say examples are of course wonderful, and we definitely go. I liked very much the statistics about putting out, let's say, the importance of public space for sport and movement, physical movement. So the public space and the streets, of course, one of the most important, let's say, platforms, spaces in order to play. And Daniel, it's the floor for you. Please.
Hello. As you said, I'm Daniel Yabar. I am a Spanish architect. I was a skateboarder much earlier than becoming architect. And I want to talk in this session about skateboarding and public space. So I will share my screen. So, okay, that's it. It's
Perfect.
This is what I'm talking about, skateboarding and public space. And I will make a short introduction about a little bit of history and a little bit of general context. And then I will try to show some examples of public skate parks that we have designed. So about the skateboarding, I think that everybody has heard some stories about the origins of skateboarding, about the surfers in California that didn't have waves to ride, so they put some wheels on their boards and they started to roll over the city. And at the very beginning, there was no public facilities, so the street was the playground, and so it was easy to see these guys going downhill, riding through the streets, or maybe finding some empty pools and skating the pool. So at the very beginning, I think we can say that there's a big connection between the public space and skateboarding, because there was no previous facilities, there was no previous playgrounds to skate. So at the very beginning, there was some iconic skate spot, or Love Park in Philadelphia. And then you have also Embarcadero, San Francisco. So at the very beginning, there was no public skate parks, there was no public facilities or private skate parks, there was just the street. So I think there's a big connection between skateboarding and public space, and I really think that this connection is very focused on two things. There's a connection between identity and there's a connection between community. I think that it's important to understand that for so many skaters, being a skateboarder, it means individual identity as much as religion or race or sex. So for many of us, we are skateboarders all over a lot of things. No? So, and then by the other way, there's a community involved in this, and they all get together in the public space. Sometimes I say that for me, or for so many skaters in the world, I have so many things in common with a skateboarder in Russia or Mexico or Australia. Probably I have more things in common than with my grandfather or even my father. So, I mean, there's these two things, individual identity and community, and they go together through the public space. Then, by the normal evolution of skateboarding, and they started to build the first public skate parks like this one in the early 70s, 80s. And the first skate parks was just, most of them were about the concrete desert concept. But at the time that the skateboarding was evolving, also the skate park facilities also were developed. And then there was a new concept that was the skate plazas, that there was like a mixture of a skate park and a street feature. And so you can find the typical elements of the streets, like the stairs or the handrails and this kind of things, all in one space. But at the same time, there was so many skate parks that didn't come up to the expectative of the users, and it's easy to find on internet some list of the 10 worst skate parks ever built or the worst skate parks in the world. And I really believe that most of the times, or sometimes, it's not just about the design. Sometimes it's more about other things. And I think that many times it's about location, many times it's about connections, and sometimes it's just because you can only skate there. So it makes the place like a little bit only for skaters. So there was something happening that many times the skaters, the skateboarding community, refuses the skate parks, even if the skate park is a really nice design of a skate park, but they tend to refuse the skate park because they want to stay in the city, they want to stay skating in the streets, and they don't want to be in a place just for skateboarding, without any interaction out with the city, no shops, no people around, just you and your skate and your two friends. So sometimes it's not just only about the design of the skatepark, but it's more about the global context. And this is what I was talking earlier about the identity, because so many skaters, they feel that they belong to the streets and they don't want to stay in a sport facility equipment. And so let's say that at the very beginning, when there was no skate parks, the skateboarding and the public space, they both included integration and coexistence. But at the time that the evolution of the skate parks went to skate parks, and then you have also Olympic skate parks, you have bowl skate parks, you have skate parks for skaters, but you have also skate park for BMX, for scooter, for roller. You have skate plazas. Then you have also DIY movement, that is some kind of skate park built by the skaters, like do it yourself. So you have a lot of kind of skate parks, but I think all of them has lost this integration and coexistence with other users, other people, integration in the city. So many times the skate park is a facility outside the city, with bad connections, bad surroundings, and the skaters don't want to go there, and they stay in the center of the city. They want to keep skating in the plaza that was not designed for skateboarding, but it's a good place for a skate. So I think that was the main problem that I think that I try to focus when I work on the design of the skate parks and public space. And because of this, then it started to appear this movement of defensive architecture that not only affects the skateboarders, but only other people who wants to share the city and stay in the city. And this was obviously a big problem for skateboarders, because we have to think that for a skateboarder, even for me, our perspective of the city, I think, is completely different from other users of the city. From our perspective, the whole city is the playground, potentially. I mean, everything can be a skate spot, potentially, of course. And some of them are better, some of them are worse. But for the mentality of the skater, the whole city is the skate. So that brings a challenge for the urbanists, for the planners, for the architects to design spaces, knowing if this is going to be a good place for a skate or not, because it's really surprising to see, even now, not maybe years ago, but not actually, they still designing places that are just perfect for skateboarding, but then it's banned to skate there. So it's quite surprising to think, you are giving me the best place in the center of the town, and you are not letting me skate. Something is wrong here. No? And then, so I try to focus on my work, on my own experience. I try to focus on those two things, on integration and coexistence. At the very beginning, I did some skate parks, and I tried to run away from the gray concrete concept of a skate park. So I try to integrate as much as I can the design on the urban context and the surroundings. And then, for example, this skate park in Parque de la Granja, Tenerife, it's located in the Canary Island. The location is a big park in the center. It's like with a lot of trees, a lot of people doing sport. It's like a location in the center of the city. So we try to work with integration, with the textures of the concrete, with giving areas with shadow, areas without shadow. Or, for example, this one in Logroño, in La Rioja, that we try to design like a urban public standard space that at the very beginning seems to be a very skate park. So it's more like a skate plaza concept. And then this was was the way I try to integrate my designs in the city, in the different locations. But at the same time, I was aware that there has to be more things, not just integration, because when the place is only for skateboarding, then other people get excluded of the place. So it's really a really big challenge to design a place where the skaters can use it, but also BMX, also scooter, but also pedestrians, also the fathers with their kids. So it becomes a place for everybody. Because the very normal problem in the skate parks is that when the skate park becomes a marginal place, because maybe it's outside of the city without connections, or there's no surroundings, there's no living around the skate parks. Sometimes there are people skating and people doing what they are supposed to do, like using drugs or things like that. So I think that the challenge is to design spaces that they are the coexistence of different uses, not just skateboarding, but also pedestrians or fathers with the kids, BMX, scooter, not just only skateboarding. So the first attempt I tried to do in a skateboarding facility was this skate plaza in San José de la Rinconada in Seville, where we tried to include a basketball course in the middle of the skate park. So you can go there to skate, you can chill, you can play basket. So this was like the first attempt, not just the aesthetic skate park, not just the design about the skateboarding, but the possibility or having the different possibilities of using the space. And this another example is in Santiago de Compostela, Plaza Constitución. I will try to focus more on this example because I think this is a good example of integration, coexistence, and also negotiation with the stakeholders of the projects. This project was designed in 2019 in Santiago de Compostela. The background of the project was that there was a plaza in the center of the city. It was behind the Galician Parliament. It was a granite square plaza that was completely perfect for skateboarding. So the local skaters, they made this place by his home. But there was some problems of coexistence with another users of the square, because there was a kid facility close to the area where the skaters used to ride. So this is the Plaza Constitución, and this was the area where the kids were used to skate. And then you have a kids facility, and then you also had a skate park, but the design of the skate park was not really good. So the whole community of skaters were developed here. They were skating here. This is the Galician Parliament, so it's a very central area of the city. And because of these problems of coexistence, the Council of Santiago wanted to give a solution by doing a skate park in another area, probably outside of the city. And the community of skaters, the association of local skaters, they fight to stay on the plaza. But there was no chance for the council because of the problems of the coexistence with the neighborhoods. So we thought another strategy for the local skaters to stay on the area, but at the same time, the rest of the users of the plaza, they feel safe, and there was compatible everything. So in this area, you have the main path is this one here, and there was another second path here. And then you have this Plaza Mirador that was like a marginal place. This was a place for what we call botellón in Spain. It's a place for drinking in the street. It was not really a healthy place, but there was also a granite flat ground. So at the very beginning, it looks like maybe this could be a possibility to locate them here instead of there. This is the Plaza Constitución. This is a granite square flat ground. We have to say that probably the best material for skateboarding is granite. So when a new place in a random city is made out of granite, there's big possibilities that the skaters go there. And this was the existing escape park. Doesn't look really fun. And this one was the Plaza Mirador. So the negotiation between the local association and the council was to bring them to the Plaza Mirador, redesign the plaza, and also make a connection here with another plaza that they call El Pasillo. So they accept to ban skate here by using skate stoppers. And by the other hand, they can skate here and they can skate here. We keep the main pathway, the pedestrian pathway, because you have a lot of administrative buildings here. But this second pathway that is not really used was like was on the back of the park, was really a potential place for doing a new area for skateboarding connected to the Plaza Mirador. So this was the main program to make not skatable in this area and make this whole area skatable. And then introducing another uses like calisthenics workout. So this is the perspective of the pasillo, and this one is the Plaza Mirador. And the main goal was to make all in granite, because as I told you, is probably the best material for skateboarding. And we also had this particular situation because one of the kids of the local association was a blind guy. He's a blind skater. He's an influencer on Instagram, and we did this model of the place, of the skatable area, so he could taste and touch the spots and understand how it was the skate park, the skate plaza. And at the end, that was the result of this project. We redesigned the Plaza Mirador, so now it's a place for sport. It's no longer a marginal place. It's a sport area where the kids go to skate, and then you have the El Pasillo, the skate Plaza El Pasillo, who is connected with the Plaza Mirador. And by the other hand, the Plaza Constitución, you have the skate stoppers, and then you have also other uses like calisthenics. So I really think this is a good example, not just integration, not just coexistence, but also negotiation with the local community, with the government. So I think this is really the way that we should go to design the street, just involving the local stakeholders of the project. That's my experience. So it was a pleasure.
Very good, Daniel. Thank you very much for your beautiful insight. Maybe you can close the screen, and we then can start our round the table discussion in a way. Interesting also to know that granite is a really good material for skating. I didn't knew that. I thought always that it's too hard to fall, and it gives you a lot of inches. But it is why is it actually? Can you explain it?
Well, because the granite is a very strength material that doesn't lose the properties within the time. Because the concrete at the very beginning is really polished, but with the time it gets erosion. Is not so good. And also because of the pop. The pop is when you make the trick and the board hits the ground. The hit of the pop of the granite.
Okay, that's perfect. Yeah. Okay, very good insight. I guess it has to do also about the treatment, because if you use like here in Porto, we have a lot of this kind of small granite blocks, and then I guess it should be also very good in the detail. I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Of course.
Okay, very good. I think we have three wonderful presentations to see also the let's say in broad way and spectrum on what the street as an active place can be done. Just some question about for Annemieke. Is walking actually a really physical activity? Are there degrees on that?
Degrees? What you mean, like depending on the way you walk?
Yeah, I don't know. You study a beautiful book, and I'm wondering if you have different kind of walking desires or assignments.
Oh, desires are so. Oh, I thought you meant like how active can you be depending on the way you walk. But it reminds me of a picture I saw once of different kinds of walks and then how much energy that costs. So you can just walk really slowly, of course. And I think I just saw some figures about how fast people walk depending on which city they live in. And I think in some city in I think Malawi in Africa, they just walk like 2.3 kilometers an hour.
Okay.
But then in Singapore, they walk like 6.7 kilometers an hour. So in that way, there's a really difference between how active you can walk. Or did you mean different kinds of walking, or being in a wheelchair or skate or?
This is, I was referring, but this is really nice because I once went to New York, and then you have this stoplights, and then you are going to have 3 blocks. You have to walk a little bit faster, like in the movies, all the people, because otherwise you have to stop every block somehow. So I guess that's also a rhythm of. Now I was referring. You showed one slide about different kind of space which you need for.
Oh right, you mean that.
On the right, really right, you had let's say children playing.
Yeah.
It's also a kind of walking. I guess this is another kind of way to see walk or movement in this pedestrian area.
Yes, well, that's what I meant by that. Walking is not just walking and well, I think the best English word is sojourning. So you can also just stand still and have a talk. Or, I mean, you can do that sitting on a bench, but you can also just stand still and have a talk with somebody you just met on the street, or with your neighbor, or maybe you meet some children, or the children are playing on the sidewalk. Because, well, this is also from a research I read about, that children like to play on the sidewalk, and they play more in neighborhoods where the sidewalks are broad enough than in sidewalks where there are just separate playing areas tucked away somewhere in a place where it was difficult to build another house, or you know what I mean? So you just want to be able to play in front of your house. Your mother is inside, You can do, I mean, if there's something wrong, you can scream. I don't know. The mother finds it nicer too, or the father, I should say. Whatever, whichever, it doesn't matter. So it's closer by. So yes, you would like to have playing enough space to play. Yeah. This space for children, and it's really important in the proximity to a house. Rene, you showed a lot of, let's say, insight in this biking, and especially this new kind of typology, the cycling bridges of Copenhagen. Do you think cycling has the same interaction as walking, actually? Because it's in a way you move a lot, but it's also on kind of high speed, I guess. It's difficult to stop or interact with persons. And what you had also in the end with this beautiful picture of the little cafe, that you mentioned that human touch or human connection, that was an important thing. How do you see that challenge, the social part of biking?
Well, a lot of people, they ride together and they are talking. Of course, their attention is not on other bikers, but I think they socialize a lot. And personally, I like to go very fast because I used to be a bicyclist on a road cycling. But if people want to go by 15 or 20 kilometers an hour, I think you can easily socialize. For the moment, we have a lot of construction work in Copenhagen, I would say all over Denmark, because of the climate change, that we have to be sure that we can adapt all the and we can consume all the water that comes from the sky. So it's become quite difficult to go side by side. But I mean, it's for the moment, and later on, we actually improving the bicycle highways and the bicycle path quite many places. And Annemieke, I'm sorry about you being just second or third in Holland, but we also have to reckon that you are 3 times as many Dutch people than we are in Denmark. I mean Danish people, and we are living on the same size of soil, of the same size of country. And that means that there are probably 3 times more cars in Holland and the Netherlands than there are in Denmark, and we have plenty. We have too many. So of course there is a big difference when it comes to space, because the thing that you highlighted is not a problem here, not at all.
Making enough space for pedestrians, you mean? It's not a problem in Denmark.
No.
Not even in Copenhagen. Yeah, I can imagine that in large cities the problems are alike.
There are problems all over, especially if you're in a wheelchair or with a walker, because you cannot walk on this type of pavement. But we have a lot more space than you have, and you even have to produce a hell lot of tomatoes in the Netherlands. So it also takes a lot of space. So there's a difference. But the interesting thing is that we know that this densifying of the city actually works. People they take the bike if it's a short distance to work.
So, do people go by skateboarding to their work, or to? Is it in transport mode? Is it fun to do, or is it practical to do, Daniel?
Yes, it is. And I think in the case of Copenhagen, I think the city is perfect for transport by skateboarding, of course. Probably I cannot say the same about Madrid, because Madrid is quite different. You don't have this intensive use of bicycle. You have a lot of highways. It's different. But probably in a city in Netherlands or Copenhagen, probably you can go with your skateboard and usually start things.
If you mentioned in your talk that basically all the city is in potential on skate space to do.
Yeah.
A little bit the spirit of parkour in a way itself as well. And so the city is your sport field. If you look to Madrid for your own city, what are then the key elements that you think it should be improved? Or you mentioned it's difficult to bike, I guess also with skate. What are the three things that you think Madrid should be doing now?
Well, Madrid is a metropolitan city, but in the center you have so many nice skate spots, no skate parks, just spots. But I think the key is the awareness. We have to teach. We have to teach the urbanists, the architects, that they have to have a little knowledge of what is good for skateboarding or not. Because I will just say an example in Madrid. We have just made a square plaza, granite plaza, in front of the Congress of the Spanish Parliament.
Okay.
So the place is completely perfect for skateboarding. So if you design this in the center of Madrid, you should have known that this will be full of skaters. And if you don't, now you cannot ban skateboarding from here. Luckily, there's a street with the police, and they let the skaters to skate in a corner of the plaza. It's the best place for skateboarding in Madrid. Is just in front of the Congress of the Parliament. And you have so many skate parks around the city, in the metropolitan area, but a lot of skaters want to go there and don't want to go to the skate park because this is the place, this is the center, this is everybody wants to be.
Has that to do what you said about this culture that you sometimes can really communicate with all the people that are skating around the world, meeting each other, culture? Is that the spirit of so not being in the periphery, but on the front, highlighting, seeing, watching people?
Yeah, of course, because it's not just about doing your hobby or your passion. It's not just about skateboarding. It's just about experience the city, go to skate, go to eat, go to chill. And if you go to the skate park that it's 50 kilometers outside the city, you go to skate, then you go back home. But you don't use the city. So
yeah. In a way, the same thing as the proximity, what Annemieke was saying about children. So if you are young and you can do it in the neighborhood or around the corner, then it's of course easier. Rene, how do you see that this kind of being also quite long and steady on this thematic about sport, architecture, urban planning in a way? What is the big trend in a way? What is new? What is coming in terms of sport the coming years? What we have to take into account if we make our public space in specific, let's say, streets.
So when you say sport, do you mean winning medals, or do you mean physical movement? I'm
talking about sport in the broad sense. Of course, it's one thing. It's winning medals, but the most important is, let's say, physical activity, daily life, and it can be more leisure, but it can be also some kind of small competitions.
But I think the biggest challenge is to somehow cheat people into choose, let's say, the bike or walk or jog or whatever, without them knowing that it's not like you have to do this or that, just that they do that by themselves. And just to comment on what you said, Daniel, I've always been thinking about, you wrote about this with the skate park and the city and inclusion and all that. But I would say that for the skater, the city is the scene. It's where you show what you can. And the skate park is the training space. That's where you learn what you want to show. And Yeah, and yet because they are choosing with you said the most popular place in Madrid was in front of the parliament, I think you said. And that's because it's a scene. Everybody goes there, the tourists, everybody, and you can show what you can. It's the same for parkour. And I absolutely agree with you saying that it's about politics, because I'm pretty sure that the skaters share the same idea about how the world should be. It's not a sport, it's something about we share ideas, we share ideology, and we share clothes, we share, and that's the interesting thing about skating and
there's so many times that we say that skateboarding is not just a sport or a hobby, it's more like an identity.
Yes, exactly.
It's in their minds, and they feel they are skaters over Spanish, over sex, over race. The first thing about their identity is being a skateboarder.
Yeah.
And of course, they want to be in the place where everybody can see them. They don't want to be in a skate park outside the city where nobody goes. Of course, you can do both things. I do both things. I go to the skate park just to train, to meet my friends. But I also like to go through the city and experience the city, not being in the outside area.
Very good, very interesting talk what we have, and we are getting into the complexity of life and lifestyle, and let's say that it's much more. Annemieke, can you imagine that skate is a thing to integrate in street design in your projects, in your script?
Yes, I can. I was kind of taken by the idea of having it more connected with other activities in the city instead of just separate skating parks. I think he's got a point. It's really important. But on the one hand, I think, yes, integrate. And on the other hand, I'm a little bit reluctant to say, yes, of course, let all skaters use the walking spaces. And that is because everybody is a pedestrian, but most of the maybe not most of the pedestrians, but let's say most of the older people and most of the really small children have no other way of, have no other form of mobility than walking. So relatively a lot of pedestrians compared to cyclists or people in cars are really small or really old. And for them, it might be really difficult if somebody is just swooshing by on a skateboard and they think like, whoa, what's happening? But on the other hand, I think if there's plenty of space, so if the sidewalk is broad enough, yes, why not? Just come and join the rest of the pedestrians. And concerning your other question earlier on, if skaters or people who use skateboards, yes, I can also skate to work. I think if you have a very high speed, at least in the Netherlands, I would suggest using the bike lane and not the sidewalk. Okay. So that's it, I think.
I think you nail in a way with your answer also that in public space in streets is of course always a kind of limited space. As in some cities you have a larger space in other things, but there is a lot of happening of course in this narrow street space. And then of course you have a kind of battle of users and frictions, and but with a little bit of friction you have also interaction. So there are a lot of elements, but we see it of course in a lot of cities in Europe, also here in Porto for instance, that you have this electric steps, you know, that you can just rent by your credit card or by an app, and then suddenly, because you have small spaces here, a lot of people, they use the pedestrian areas here, and the pedestrian areas here, a lot of times it's smaller than 1.5 meters. Sometimes we have 50 centimeters, or even some parts are really poor, but they're not a large thing. So there's a lot of friction between, let's say, mainly tourists, because it's not a really day-to-day transport mode here, and this thing. So I can imagine, let's say, the skating has to do with this. How does the skate world look to, let's say, the other users of the spaces. You said about negotiation in Santiago de Compostela. What was the key element where you thought that both users could live with each other, let's say, like this, and maybe saw their extra value to be together in the same place?
Yeah, well, in this case of Santiago, I think that the key was to maintain a constant contact with the association and the council to make the good communication so between them, to find a middle point where they can be all agree. But in general, in a general perspective, I think it's necessary to find friendly skate spots inside the city, not sport facility. Of course, we need everything. We need Olympic training facilities. We need recreational skate parks, but we also need skateboarders. I'm talking like as a lobbyist, of course, but we need this kind of friendly skate spots integrated in the city as part of the
Mhm.
This is what we ask the skateboarders. I'm not talking as an architect, but more as a skateboarder.
Mhm.
This is what we need. It's friendly skate spot areas.
Yeah, I guess what you said in a way in the Plaza of Madrid, that this is the suggestion in a way that you made is to say if you were involved in the process of the design, it maybe you had some even better skate park than skate place than what you have now. So that this integration, I think it's important. Rene, how do you see that from a tennis? Because you show also a really beautiful example at the end, the mountain, and that was about a combination of functions or necessities in, let's say, cities. So in a way, the energy and sustainable energy combining with new kind of sport thing. Do you see other kind of wonderful combinations in your city, in your country?
Oh, there are a lot, but
regarding, of course, to streets.
to streets, yes.
Yeah.
But I was thinking that one thing I wanted to point out is that if we are talking about what I call intelligent city planning, which is the city that promotes the healthy life, the good life, I want to point out that it's not about spending a lot of money on the solutions. And I just want to give you another example that we used to be able to bring our bike on the national railroad around Copenhagen, but it costed like 1.5 euro. And people were a little bit annoyed that it had to cost something. And suddenly they said, okay, it's free. And it was a success. It became a tremendous success because if it was raining in the morning, people they went by train, paid for the train and not for the bike. And if the sun is out in the evening, they go back home by bike. That means that it's a win-win situation. The railroad company earns 4.5 euro that they would not have earned if you had to pay for your bike. And people have a wonderful trip back home in the evening. And in this case, they didn't know that it would become such a success. It just use your imagination. So I think you, Annemieke and Daniel, you might agree with me that it doesn't cost a lot of money to make the livable city. Yes, as long as you use your imagination, and the politicians are willing to try new things.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree, but that is also, I think, the reason why a lot of pedestrian projects are not being done, because they are too cheap, which might sound a little bit strange, but I don't know, sometimes I think that really costly infrastructural projects are I don't know, they get more attention. They are sort of more sexy. I don't know exactly why. And pedestrians are just too normal and too cheap. It's really not that that cool to be into pedestrians, I think. I mean, for politicians, for example, we just want to score with a major project. And then it's just a project for pedestrians, which doesn't even cost a lot, which could be an advantage, but sometimes isn't, I think.
That is a really good question. How to make with a lot of small things that doesn't cost a lot of effort. So for the ones that are in planning and politics, please listen to Annemieke. I think you have a good one. And I had also one talks in Lyon, in the city of Lyon, and there was also the appeal, we need a master plan, a big master plan. And we said, no, maybe you can do a lot of 1,000 little plans and initiatives, and maybe with it you have a bigger picture. So this is also very interesting how to do with things. Now that we have the politics on the table, it's always with this question, and the time is running out, and I just want to let's say talk a little bit about the coming 10 minutes. So we are maybe 5 minutes over time then, if that is okay with you, about what should be the message, the main message to change planning of streets. Rene, I'm going to you to start. I know that Copenhagen in the last 25 years did a lot. What is going to be the next 25 years, at least?
Yes, I think there's going to be more of what we already got, because the politicians, they understood that it's not just about, like Annemieke, don't ever make cheap projects. Now we know that. Don't ever make cheap projects. It has to cost money. But I think that the city development of Copenhagen was standing still in the 80s and until the mid 90s. And then suddenly it rose. And there were a lot of visionary politicians, visionary planners that really wanted to make the livable city. And when the crane stopped in 2008 because of the world financial crisis, what they did was, instead of looking at crane standing still, they actually made a whole area in Ørestad, a place it was called plug and play. And it was for skaters, it was for people on, I think they were on ice skating, it was something like that. It was for BMX. And so now we can't build. So while we are waiting for the economy to grow again, let's be active. And this sign in this area is still there. It's a place where we design pedestrian streets as places where people should actually be able to be physically active. So if the visions are right, I think, I mean, the sky is only the limit. And I'm happy to say that I think we have some very, very brave politicians here in the capital of Denmark. I'm sorry, Annemieke, but we have.
Good for you.
Yeah.
We have some here, of course.
Daniel, how is it in Madrid? Because you were talking that there's a lot of highways over there, but you have also a beautiful, that is a really big master plan. It's about the Rio 2000, I think it's that project. Is that a nice place? Is that the way Madrid can enlarge, let's say, spaces for skating?
Well, I have to say that Madrid has improved very much in the few years. I really believe that Madrid still has a lot of depending on the car. It's not easy to move in Madrid without the car. That's reality. And by my hand, I don't know what's the solution for the future. I'm just a small fish in the ocean. I will just keep focusing on the projects with trying to combine this thing I was talking about, negotiation, integration, and coexistence. So that's the thing I can do in my little sphere. So.
We have heard from Annemieke. That's a really wonderful thing, an important thing to do. So, Annemieke, how is it the situation in your city or another city where you work? The Netherlands is a lot of going on, I think, on this moment. But the small projects, how is it about it?
With the small projects, well, we should have more of them, of course. Well, I think more and more cities are getting our attention also to walking, because in the Netherlands, cycling is so big that until a few years back, I think that most of the focus was on cycling, and now slowly there's more focus also going to walking, and that's also because the bicycle in the Netherlands is sort of the new car. Because we have actual traffic jams with bicyclists, and we have parking problems with cyclists. So we sort of get the same problems with the bicycle as we used to have with the car. So I think the walking is the next thing, and probably the last thing. I don't know. I don't know if it's the last thing, but for me, I think it's important. Well, the two things I talked about, of course, in the presentation, but I think the network thing is really important, because we have to make this mind shift that people are willing to walk longer distances once you give them the opportunity and make it more fun. So maybe that's what I want to tell. Make walking possible by the better network and make it fun, and then people will walk. And maybe we can then get those COVID figures up. I mean, here in the Netherlands also, we have a lot more people walking during the COVID pandemic. Mm-hmm. And maybe we can try to just keep those levels up, and even when COVID is gone.
Okay, yeah, very good. The network, I think it's a really important thing, as you mentioned, and that is a lot of studies around the world, exactly, a fine-grained network, not only on the proximity of neighborhood, but all the city, maybe also connecting with the outdoor spaces and the landscape around it for recreation and leisure areas. I think it's really important, and maybe in between cities as well, not only the biking, but also the walking on long distance, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to say, definitely between neighborhoods and not just within neighborhoods. People can really walk longer distances. Yeah.
We know people can walk, and we, as children, is one thing that we do really little already to do it before really talking. Walking is almost, let's say, something humankind. Okay, I would like to have just our last round, and maybe if we started with this main big question: what should be the assignment of the future streets? It's of course a really large, let's say, and broad and complex question. But if you can mention one or two things that should be at least in this assignment brief. What should it be, Daniel?
Well, I think that the key for the better streets, for active streets in the future, I think probably could be the negotiation with stakeholders to include the users in the design and the negotiation of the space. Mm-hmm. Probably this is one of the keys.
Yeah. Including all kinds of users, and of
course,
yeah, perfect. Rene?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question, but I was thinking that I have the honor and privilege to be the director of the Sport and Leisure Group under the International Union of Architects, and on Friday, the union is going to launch a kind of a theme that we want to look very heavily on from now and into the coming years, and it's called Design for Health. And the General Secretary, she said to us, in the future, whenever you design something, include health. That means that if you are going to design a hospital, the design outside of the hospital and leading up to the hospital should make people healthier. That means that they never have to enter the hospital. That's the vision. And I'm very, very proud about that. Our organization, our top umbrella organization, is beginning to have this view on the city that we should design for health. It's not the modernistic city, because the modernistic city was not preventing sickness. It was just making sure that air was clean and we could be out walking on green grass. No, now we're talking about the city must be designed for health. I'm very proud about that. And I'm not talking about, Annemieke, that we should have another virus in order for people to walk in.
I didn't mean that. Just keeping up those walking and cycling figures without the pandemic.
So if you mean that you want to infect people in Holland, then don't say it loud.
Of course not. Of course not.
Very good. Health, we notion thing, and I guess it's not only about the physical body, but also the mental healthy, because this is also a big challenge in our society. Annemieke, what should be on this assignment brief from your part?
Well, I think shifting priorities. Two active streets or activities on the street instead of all those other things in the street. And well, I think politicians and then also designers should be brave to make choices. I mean, there's limited space, dare to make choices. And then the good ones, which are the ones that promote health.
Very good. Very nice. Thank you all very much. Annemieke, Rene, Daniel, in whatever kind of order. All of you, thank you very much for this session. For the audience, thank you very much for watching, or if you watch this after it, thank you as well. If you have questions, remarks, you can mail us. The mail is on the website mail@thefuturedesignofstreets.eu. And we will also send a small newsletter with asking for the survey, where you can put questions for the next sessions. The next session will be livable streets, and there we have 3 wonderful speakers, in this case from Barcelona, Milano, and Lisbon. And probably there are a few subjects that are overlapping, but of course we are going to talk about let's say interventions, small temporary interventions, and how this can be enlarging and improving, let's say, the livable environment of streets. Thank you very much, all of you, and thank you and the audience. See you on 2 of March. Bye.